Captain Elias Thorne gripped the armrests of his command chair, the hum of the USS Vanguard's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of dim lights and flickering screens, the crew's faces illuminated by the glow of consoles. Elias, broad-shouldered and scarred from a decade of frontier skirmishes, scanned the readouts with eyes that had seen too many stars die. Beside him, Lieutenant Mira Voss typed furiously, her fingers dancing over the interface, her cautious nature evident in the way she double-checked every entry. "Sir, the relay buoy signal is fading. Interference from the nebula, it's like static in a storm." Across the bridge, Engineer Raj Patel leaned against a bulkhead, wiping grease from his hands on his jumpsuit. Witty as ever, even in tension, he cracked a half-smile. "Nebula? More like the universe's way of saying, stay home. We've poked enough cosmic bears this trip." The fourth member, Dr. Lena Kirk, the xenobiologist, paced near the viewport, her tablet clutched like a shield. Brave to a fault, she'd volunteered for this survey mission, eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. The viewport framed the swirling chaos of the Orion Arm's edge, a nebula birthing stars and fiery tendrils. Their mission: map uncharted routes, scout for habitable worlds. But the buoy they deployed hours ago was meant to ping back data on a promising signal, something artificial buried in the gas clouds. Elias straightened. "Voss, boost the gain. Patel, reroute power to sensors. Kirk, what do we know about that blip?" Lena stopped pacing, her voice steady. "It's not natural. Pulsed emissions like a beacon. Could be wreckage or something alive out there." The ship shuddered lightly as a plasma eddy brushed the hull, and Elias felt the familiar pull of the unknown. They'd come this far on human grit, turning back wasn't in the stars. Myra's console beeped urgently. "Contact confirmed, sir. But it's weak, garbled. Audio only." She patched it through, and the bridge filled with a low rhythmic whine, interspersed with bursts of what sounded like language. "Alien." Elias leaned forward, the weight of first contact settling on his shoulders. "Record everything. Let's hear what the void has to say." As the signal clarified, fragmented words emerged in a synthetic translation overlay. "Warned, approach, burning." The crew exchanged glances, the air thickening. Raj pushed off the bulkhead. "Sounds like bad party invites. We RSVPing?" But Elias's jaw tightened. Whatever it was, it carried a warning, and they were already knocking on the door. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge's consoles a faint vibration through the deck plating. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer sensors, showing the jagged silhouette of the asteroid belt against the void. Her crew, 3 souls in this battered frigate, moved with the quiet efficiency born of too many close calls. Lieutenant Kai Ren, her wiry engineer, hunched over a diagnostic panel, fingers dancing across holographic readouts. Beside him, Dr. Mira Solis, the xenobiologist, stared at her tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. And then there was Jax, the pilot, lounging in his seat with deceptive calm, but his eyes tracked every blip on the navigation overlay. "We've got incoming," Jax said, his voice steady, no trace of the sarcasm that usually laced his words. The asteroid field was no joke. One wrong nudge from a micrometeorite and they'd be spinning debris. But this was different, deliberate pings, echoing from the larger rocks like sonar in a murky sea. Ilara leaned forward. "Source. Multiple signatures. Small craft closing fast. Not ours." Jax's hands hovered over the controls, ready to evade. Kai looked up, grease smudged on his cheek. "Shields at 80% after that last ion storm. If they hit us, it'll hurt." Mira set her tablet down, her cautious nature showing in the way she glanced at Ilara for orders. "Could be scavengers. Or worse, the Krell. Their transmissions mentioned territorial enforcement in this sector." Ilara's jaw tightened. The Krell, those tentacled bureaucrats from the core worlds, had been pushing boundaries since the Alliance formed. Humans like her, out on the fringes, were just pests to them, warnings ignored until the burn came. But she wasn't one for speeches. "Helm, plot an evasive through the belt. Engineering, reroute power to forward deflectors. Mira, give me a scan on those signatures." The ship lurched as Jax punched the thrusters, weaving between tumbling boulders the size of habitats. Alarms chirped, proximity alerts. Ilara watched the screen, 5 blips, angular and predatory, darting like schools of mechanical fish. They weren't firing yet, but the intent was clear. "They're hailing," Mira reported, her voice tight. She patched it through, and a guttural voice filled the bridge, translated by the AI into clipped English. Human vessel, you trespass in Krell claim space. Power down and prepare for boarding. Jax snorted softly. Like hell. Ilara's mind raced. Surrender meant impoundment, maybe worse. Rumors of human crews vanishing into labor camps. Fight? They were outnumbered, outgunned. But run, the belt offered cover if they could use it. Ignore them. Kai, can we vent plasma from the exhaust to mask our signature? Kai's eyes lit up, the engineer's grit kicking in. Risky, but yeah. It'll look like a reactor breach. Buy us time to slip behind that big rock. Designation Alpha 7. Do it. Ilara nodded to Mira, who was already pulling up mineral scans. Doc, anything in this field we can weaponize? Loose fragments, magnetic anomalies? Mira tapped furiously. There's a cluster of iron-nickel asteroids nearby. If we slingshot one their way. The plan formed in fragments, shared in glances and terse words as the Krell ships closed. Jax banked hard, the frigate groaning under G-forces, dodging a laser graze that scorched the hull. Kai initiated the vent, blue plasma bloomed behind them, a false distress signal lighting up the sensors. On the view screen, the Krell formation hesitated, two peeling off to investigate the wreckage. Ilara's heart pounded, but she kept her voice even. Now Jax, full burn to Alpha 7. The ship surged, the belt's shadows swallowing them whole. But as they rounded the massive asteroid, a new alert blared. Reinforcements warping in from the system's edge. The Krell weren't letting go easy. Ilara exchanged a look with her crew, camaraderie forged in the fire of survival. This warning they'd ignored? It was about to echo back louder. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control room, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the bulkheads. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. She'd been staring at the same diagnostic screen for hours, willing it to change, but the readouts remained stubbornly red. Radiation levels in the outer hull were climbing, a slow poison seeping through the seals they'd patched after the first impact. Still nothing from the relay? She asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her temples. Beside her, Engineer Tomas Ruiz hunched over a jury-rigged console, his fingers flying across the keys with the precision of someone who'd lost too many friends to hesitation. He shook his head, not looking up. The burst we sent looped back garbled. Whatever hit us fried the antennas. But I'm rerouting power from the secondary batteries, should give us one more shot before they drain dry. Across the room, Lena Core paced, her boots thudding softly against the grated floor. The xenobiologist's usually calm demeanor had cracked. Her eyes darted to the viewport where the stars blurred into streaks of fire. We can't wait for reinforcements that aren't coming, she said, stopping to lean against a bulkhead. The colonists on Epsilon are counting on that data packet. If we don't transmit it, the whole expedition's for nothing. Ilara nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. The packet held everything. Soil samples proving the planet habitable, atmospheric readings that could save billions back home. But the burning, that anomalous solar flare that had blindsided their ship, had turned their triumph into a trap. One wrong move, and the Saratoga would join the graveyard of probes littering the void. Tomas straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. Power stable. Aligning the dish now. He tapped a final command, and the ship groaned as auxiliary thrusters fired, angling the battered communicator toward the relay buoy 2 light minutes away. Ilara held her breath. The screen lit up with a progress bar, inching forward like a heartbeat. 10%. 20. Lena stopped pacing, her hand unconsciously clutching the data drive at her belt. At 50%, alarms blared. A new warning flashed, structural integrity failing in Sector 7. The hull breach they'd sealed was widening, the flare's residual heat warping the metal. Abort? Tomas's voice cut through the din, his hand hovering over the kill switch. No, Ilara snapped, leaning forward. Push it. We adapt or we die out here. She unstrapped, grabbing a toolkit from the wall. Lena with me. We reinforce that breach manually. Tomas, keep the transmission alive. Lena hesitated only a second before following, her cautious nature yielding to the captain's grit. They sprinted down the corridor, the ship's hum turning to a shudder as another wave of radiation pulsed through. Sparks flew from a panel, illuminating Ilara's determined profile, brave, unyielding, the kind of leader who turned disasters into defiance. In the breach chamber, they worked in tandem, Ilara welding fresh plates while Lena fed her sealant from compressed tubes. The air grew thick, acrid with ozone, and Ilara's suit beeped a warning, exposure limits approaching. Almost there, she grunted, ignoring it. A bead of sweat traced her cheek, evaporating in the heat. Back in the control room, Tomas watched the bar climb to 98. His witty banter had faded. Now it was just him and the machine coaxing life from dying circuits. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered, bypassing a fried relay with a makeshift jumper. The transmission completed with a soft chime, the packet hurtling toward the relay on a beam of hope. But as Alara and Lena staggered back, seals holding but power flickering low, the viewport revealed the cost. The flare's edge creeping closer, a burning horizon that promised no mercy. Alara slumped into her chair, the weight of it settling in her bones. They'd sent the warning, "We warned you," but the stars offered no reply, only the cold vastness ahead. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where Lena hunched over the console, her fingers dancing across the flickering holographic display. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from heat but from the gnawing certainty that their makeshift shield was buckling. The ship, the Odyssey, groaned like a wounded beast as another wave of plasma from the nebula battered its hull. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, each one a reminder that the initial plan, rerouting power from non-essentials to reinforce the magnetic field, had already failed twice. "Talk to me, Lena," Jax called from the access hatch, his voice steady but edged with the caution that had kept him alive through 3 tours on Fringe Worlds. He wiped grease from his hands on his jumpsuit, eyes scanning the readouts projected on his wrist pad. Brave in action, yes, but he always weighed the odds first, never charging blind. She didn't look up. The field's at 30% integrity. That last surge fried the auxiliary coils. If we push more power, we'll overload the core and then we're venting atmosphere in minutes. Her words came clipped, the wit that usually lightened their shifts absent now. Lena was the clever one, the engineer who could MacGyver a fusion drive from scrap, but even she had limits. Captain Reyes stepped in from the corridor, her boots magnetic clamped to the deck to counter the ship's subtle roll. At 42 she carried the weight of command like an old scar, resolute, unyielding. Options. She didn't waste breath on blame. The decision to skirt the nebula's edge had been hers, chasing the survey data that promised rare isotopes for the colony back home. Jack straightened, glancing between them. "We could jettison the cargo pods. Lighten the load, by time for a full recharge." His suggestion hung there, practical but costly. The pods held the mining rigs that justified their mission. Lena shook her head, finally meeting Rhea's gaze. "Won't help. The plasma's adaptive. It's eating through our frequencies like acid. We need something unorthodox, maybe invert the field polarity, turn it into a reflector instead of a blocker." Reyes nodded once, decisive. "Do it. Jax, get to the auxiliary controls and monitor for feedback loops. I'll handle the bridge relays." No arguments, just motion. They moved as a unit, years of drills kicking in despite the chaos. As Lena initiated the inversion, the ship shuddered violently, lights strobing erratically. A sharp crackle filled the air, and sparks erupted from a nearby panel. Jax cursed under his breath, slamming a fire suppressor over the flames. "It's holding, barely. But the nebula's responding. Readings show it's shifting like it's probing us." On the bridge, Reyes gripped the armrests, watching the view screen where the nebula swirled in malevolent hues of violet and crimson. The burning wasn't just radiation. It was alive in ways their sensors couldn't fully parse, a cosmic predator drawn to their energy signature. The warning transmission from the Lost Drake expedition echoed in her mind, "We warned you," but she dismissed it as hysteria. Now, with the hull temperature climbing and the crew's suits beeping oxygen warnings, doubt crept in like hull breaches. Lena's voice crackled over the comm, polarity flip complete. "We're reflecting 70%, but it's taxing the generators. We've got maybe an hour before cascade failure." "Copy," Reyes replied, her tone even. "Keep it together. We're not ending like the Drake." She keyed in a course adjustment, veering toward a denser gas pocket that might dilute the plasma flow. The ship lurched, inertial dampeners straining, and for a moment the assault eased, just enough to breathe. But as they plunged deeper, a new alert pierced the cabin, structural integrity dropping in the forward bays. Something was wrong. Jax's face appeared on the secondary screen, pale. "Captain, we've got a breach. Not from the plasma, it's internal." "Sabotage?" "No, wait, the cargo pod seals are failing on their own." Rhea's jaw tightened. "The isotopes in those pods, volatile, reactive. If they ignited..." She punched the override, but the console lagged, fried circuits protesting. "Evacuate that section. Now." The team scrambled, the adventure turning to raw survival. Lena sealed bulkheads while Jack suited up for a manual patch, his caution yielding to necessity. In the nebula's glow the Odyssey fought on, but the cost was mounting, one wrong move and the burning would claim them all. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white against the cold metal. The stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks as the Vanguard pushed harder, engines humming with a strain that echoed in her chest. Marco was below in the engine room, barking orders at the auxiliary crew, his voice crackling over the intercom like gravel. "Come on, you stubborn beast, give me another knot," he'd shouted earlier, wiping sweat from his brow before diving back into the tangle of conduits. Lila hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between readouts. "The core temperature spiking again," she said, voice steady but laced with that familiar caution. "If we don't vent soon, we'll cook from the inside out." Elena nodded, not turning. The alien fleet, those sleek iridescent ships of the Krell Concord, hung in the void ahead, oblivious or arrogant, their formation tight and unyielding. The warning transmission had looped for hours now: evacuate the sector. Solar ejection imminent. We warned you. But they'd ignored it, just like the probes, the beacons, the frantic hails. Humans had mapped this storm's fury years ago, plotted its path with grim precision. The Krell thought their shields invincible. A shudder ran through the hull, and Elena's stomach dropped. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the deck. "Marco," she called into the comm, "got it? Wait, no?" His reply cut off in static, replaced by a groan of metal. The ship listed, gravity compensators whining as they fought to stabilize. Lila tapped furiously at her tablet. Secondary thrusters offline. Something's shearing the couplings. Elena's mind raced. The plan had been simple. Slip past their flank, deploy the relay buoys to amplify the warning, force them to see the data. But the Krell had jammed their sensors, a subtle interference that masked the storm's approach. Now, with the ejection wave cresting the system's edge, their window was slamming shut. She hit the override, manual controls flickering to life under her fingers. The Vanguard bucked like a wild thing, veering toward the Krell's outer picket. "All hands brace. We're going in hot." The viewport filled with the glow of enemy hulls, energy shields shimmering like oil on water. A Krell interceptor peeled off, its weapons ports glowing. Elena jinked left, the ship protesting with a screech, but the shot grazed them anyway, a glancing plasma arc that lit the deck in harsh blue. Sparks showered from a panel. Lila ducked, shielding her face. "Shields at 60%. We can't take another." Elena gritted her teeth, plotting an intercept. If they could tag that lead cruiser with the buoy, broadcast the storm's trajectory straight into their command net. But Marco's voice broke through again, ragged. "Elena, core's critical. I need 5 minutes to reroute power or we blow." 5 minutes they didn't have. The storm's corona was visible now, a roiling inferno blooming from the star's heart, tendrils of plasma lashing out like whips. The Krell ships didn't waver, their formation held, comms silent. "Patch me through," Elena said. Lila hesitated, then nodded, fingers flying. The channel opened, raw and unfiltered. "Krell command, this is Vanguard. Your shields won't hold against what's coming. Pull back, now. We've lost colonies to this before. Don't make it your grave." Static hissed, then a voice, cold, synthesized alien. "Primitive warnings from fleeting sparks. Your data is error. We proceed." Elena slammed the console. "Stubborn idiots." The interceptor closed in, firing a warning burst that clipped their wing. The Vanguard spun, Elena wrestling controls as inertia tore at her harness. Below, Marco cursed in the engine bay, tools clattering as he jury-rigged a bypass. Sweat stung his eyes, the heat oppressive, gauges redlining. "Lila, talk to me, how's the relay prepped?" "Online but unstable," she replied over the suit comm, voice tight as she sealed a bulkhead against venting gas. "If we deploy too close, it'll fry." He grinned through the pain of a burned hand. "Then we get creative." Spot welds flew from his torch, bridging circuits that shouldn't touch. The ship groaned around him, every vibration a reminder of the thin line between flight and fire. Up top, Elena spotted a gap in their formation, a supply drone lumbering slow. "There." Lila locked the buoy on that fat target. As the Vanguard dove, the storm's edge hit first, a wave of radiation that washed over shields, making them flicker. The Krell ships lit up with alerts of their own, but too late. Elena fired the buoy, a silver dart streaking free. It latched onto the drone with a magnetic thud, broadcasting wide. Data flooded their net, projections of plasma surges, shield failure models, evacuation vectors. Human grid in code, unyielding. The Krell lead ship veered, confusion rippling through their line. But the interceptor bore down, weapons hot. Elena rolled the Vanguard hard, buying seconds. Marco's voice cut in, power rerouted, go go. Engines roared back to life, propelling them clear just as the interceptor's beams scorched empty space. The storm's roar grew, the burning horizon swallowing stars. But the Krell weren't scattering yet. Elena watched the viewport, heart pounding. The warning was out, undeniable now. Would they listen or burn with their pride? The cost was already mounting. Hull breaches, strained crew, a ship on the edge. And the wave was closing fast. Elena gripped the console edge as the Vanguard's alarms wailed, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat across the bridge. Sweat beaded on her forehead, the air thick with the acrid tang of overheating circuits. Jax was already elbow-deep in the access panel beneath the NAV station, his tools clattering against the deck as he muttered curses under his breath. "Come on, you stubborn heap," he growled, yanking a frayed conduit free. Sparks danced in the dim light, illuminating the grease streaks on his face. Lyra hovered nearby, her iridescent scales flickering with anxiety, tentacles twitching as she scanned the readouts on her portable holopad. "The containment field's at 47%, she said, her voice a melodic trill edged with urgency. "If we don't reroute power soon, the core breach will cascade to the outer hull." She glanced at Elena, eyes wide and pleading. "Captain, the evacuation protocols." "No time," Elena cut her off, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She'd seen too many simulations play out like this, but reality hit harder, the ship's groans echoing the dread coiling in her chest. The stellar flare they'd been racing to outrun had caught them after all, its electromagnetic fury clawing at their shields like invisible talons. And the aliens back on the relay station? They dismissed the warnings as human exaggeration, too arrogant to prep their fragile outposts. Now the Vanguard was the last line, carrying the proof in encrypted bursts that no one seemed to heed. Jax slammed the panel shut and slid out, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. Reroutes holding for now. But that flare's whipping up plasma eddies out there. One wrong nudge and we're ionized toast. He flashed a wry grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Got a plan B, boss?" "Because plan A just went nova." Elena straightened, forcing her mind to the tactical display. The initial dodge maneuver had backfired spectacularly. The flare's magnetic field had slingshot them closer to the instability zone instead of away. Now, debris from a shattered moonlet field pelted their hull, each impact a dull thud that rattled her bones. She keyed the comms, patching through to the nearest alien beacon. "This is Captain Ruiz, Vanguard. Flare intensity exceeding projections by 200%. Your stations are in the kill zone. Evacuate now or face total burnout. We warned you." Static crackled back, broken by Lyra's sharp intake of breath. "They're not responding. The interference." She trailed off, tentacles coiling tighter. "Figures," Jax snorted, pulling up a schematic on his wrist unit. "Bureaucrats with their heads in the nebulae. Look, if we vent the auxiliary tanks and use the thrust to slingshot around that gas giant fragment, we might punch through to clear space. Risky, but it's got legs." Elena waited, the ship's hum vibrating through her boots like a warning. Venting meant losing their backup life support, stranding them if the engine stuttered. But staying meant the flare's full wrath, a burning shroud that would erase them, and any chance to beam out that final damning transmission. "Do it," she said finally, meeting Lyra's gaze. "And prep the burst package. If we buy this window, it's going out, loud and clear." As Jax initiated the sequence, the deck lurched, a fresh tremor shaking the bulkheads. Alarms spiked again, and through the viewport, the star's corona bloomed brighter, a searing eye fixed on their fragile vessel. Lyra's pad chimed with an incoming ping, not from the aliens but a faint echo from the Vanguard's black box recorder, looping their earlier pleas. "We warned you," it whispered across the static, a ghost in the machine. Elena clenched her jaw, the weight of it all pressing down. They weren't heroes in some grand saga, just stubborn humans refusing to fade quietly. But as the vents hissed open and the ship bucked toward the fragment's gravitational pull, she wondered if grit alone would be enough to outrun the fire. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening against the scarred metal. The bridge lights flickered erratically, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the faces of her crew. Smoke curled from a nearby panel, acrid and insistent, but she ignored it, eyes locked on the view screen where the alien fleet hung in formation. Sleek, iridescent hulls gleaming against the void, oblivious to the storm brewing in the system's core. "They're not turning, Cap," murmured Jax, her engineer, his voice a low rumble as he wiped sweat from his brow with a grease-streaked forearm. He was the cautious one, always double-checking seals and vents, but now his hands trembled slightly as he patched another failing circuit. That plasma flare's building fast. If they don't adjust course in the next 10 minutes, it'll fry their shields like eggs on a hot deck. Elara nodded, her jaw set. She was the brave sort, the one who'd volunteered for this fringe outpost when others shied away, driven by a grit that came from too many lost outposts and forgotten warnings. Beside her, Lyra, the alien liaison from the Vexery Collective, paced with fluid grace, her bioluminescent skin pulsing in agitated blues and reds. Lyra had been their bridge to the fleet, arguing endlessly with her own kind via tight beam transmissions. But the Vexery pride ran deep, deeper than the void itself. "I've pleaded with the High Chorus," Lyra said, her voice a melodic hiss through the translator. "They call it a human exaggeration, a ploy for dominance. But the readings don't lie." She gestured to the holographic display, where the star's magnetic field twisted like a living thing, coiling toward release. Elara's plan had been simple. Lure the fleet into a safe vector using the outpost's emergency buoys, reroute them around the flare's projected path. They'd even shared the models, raw data from human probes that had mapped these anomalies for decades. But the Vexery had dismissed it, their ships holding position to claim the resource-rich asteroid belt first. Now, with the flare's energy spiking, that early maneuver felt like a lifetime ago, a backfire of arrogance that left her crew exposed on the outpost's fragile shell. A klaxon blared, sharp and unrelenting. Jax cursed under his breath, diving under the console to reroute power. Sparks flew, illuminating his focused scowl for a split second. "Auxiliary thrusters are nominal, but if we push the outpost any closer we'll be caught in the backlash. Your call, Cap." Elara waited, the weight of command pressing like the gravity they lacked out here. Push in, risk the station to drag the fleet along? Or pull back, let the Vexery burn and damn the diplomacy? She glanced at Lyra, whose lights dimmed to a somber violet. "We can't abandon them," Lyra whispered, more to herself than the humans. "Not after everything." "Thrusters engage," Elara ordered, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The outpost groaned as its engines fired, a deep vibration rumbling through the deck plates. On the view screen, the fleet loomed larger, their formations unbroken, transmissions flooding in with demands for the humans to stand down. Jax emerged, face smudged black. "Holding steady, but the flare's corona is already licking at the edges. We've got maybe 5 minutes before it hits critical." The first tendrils of plasma breached the system's outer rings, a fiery serpent uncoiling toward the belt. Elara's heart pounded, but she forced her gaze forward. In the dim glow of the bridge, Lyra placed a tentative hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture for her kind, and for a moment the divide between species felt thinner than the hull separating them from vacuum. As the outpost closed the gap, Elara keyed the emergency broadcast, her words cutting through the static. "Vexery fleet, this is Outpost Epsilon. We're extending our shields to cover your lead ships. Accept the link or burn alone. Your choice." Silence stretched, broken only by the rising whine of the flare. Then, a single ping, acknowledgement from the High Chorus vessel. It was a start, fragile as the outpost's straining frame, but in the face of the inferno, it was enough to ignite a spark of hope amid the gathering storm. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control room, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the bulkheads. Captain Elara Voss wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers leaving a streak of grime on her skin. The air recyclers hummed faintly, struggling against the acrid tang of smoke that seeped from the vents. She glanced at the console, where the latest diagnostics scrolled in red: hull integrity at 47%, oxygen reserves dipping below safe levels. The Kroth swarm's boarding pods had punched through like hot knives, and now their remnants, those chitinous drones, scuttled in the lower decks, their EMP bursts frying systems one by one. "Status on the armory breach?" Elara barked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She wasn't one for panic. Grit had gotten her this far, captaining the Endurance through asteroid fields and pirate ambushes. But this was different. The Kroth didn't negotiate, they consumed. Lieutenant Marco Reyes, her wiry engineer with a perpetual squint from poring over schematics, tapped furiously at a makeshift tablet. "Sealed it off, Captain. For now. But they're adapting, those little bastards are rerouting power through the conduits. If they hit the core we're done." His hands shook slightly as he soldered a bypass wire, the spark illuminating the worry lines etched deep into his face. Marco was the cautious one, always triple-checking seals, but even he couldn't hide the edge of fear now. From the corner behind a toppled chair, Dr. Lena Core emerged, her lab coat torn and singed. She clutched a salvaged pulse rifle, its barrel still warm from the last skirmish. Lena's sharp wit had lightened many a tense shift, but her eyes were hard now, focused. "I've got something," she said, sliding a small vial across the console. Inside, a swirling green liquid caught the light. "From the biolab. It's a neurotoxin derivative, harmless to us, but it'll scramble their hive signals. If we deploy it through the vents." Alara nodded, piecing it together. The plan from hours ago, evacuate to the shuttle bay, had backfired spectacularly when a drone swarm cut the power lifts, trapping 2 crew in the medbay. Their screams still echoed in her comms log. No time for grief, survival demanded focus. "Rig the dispersal. Marco, you handle the vents. Lena, cover him. I'll hold the door." The ship groaned as another tremor shook the deck, the Krotha's claws scraping metal somewhere below. Alara braced against the console, her mind racing through contingencies. Human ingenuity wasn't magic, it was sweat and scrap, turning desperation into defiance. But the cost mounted, every lost soul a weight on her shoulders. Marco hesitated, glancing at the vial. "What if it doesn't work? We've got maybe 20 minutes before they breach here." "Then we make it count," Alara replied, her tone leaving no room for doubt. She chambered a round in her sidearm, the click sharp in the confined space. Lena smirked faintly, a ghost of her usual banter. "For what it's worth, Captain, I've always said you humans are too stubborn to die easy." They moved as one, a trio forged in the fire of necessity. Marco pried open a panel, feeding the toxin into the system with practiced hands. Hisses echoed from the ducts, followed by the first unnatural twitches from the shadows. Drones faltering, their coordinated skitters devolving into chaos. But not all. One burst through a side grate, mandibles clicking furiously. Alara fired first, the pulse bolt shearing off a limb. Lena followed, her shot precise, dropping it in a heap of sparking exoskeleton. Marco sealed the panel just as more claws scrabbled closer. The console beeped, a transmission override. The Kroth hive mind signal, distorted now by the toxin but clear enough. A final, mocking query in broken human tongue. "Surrender. Integrate." Alara smashed the comms button, her voice broadcasting through the dying ship. "We warned you. Humanity doesn't integrate, we burn." The toxin spread, and the ship fell eerily silent, save for the labored breathing of the survivors. But victory tasted like ash, the Endurance was crippled, adrift in the void, and the stars offered no mercy. Alara stared at the viewport, the burning remnants of the Kroth fleet fading into the black. They'd won this round, but the war? It had only just ignited. The acrid smoke clawed at Lena's throat as she sealed the final bulkhead, her gloved hands trembling from the heat bleeding through the hull. The bridge hummed with emergency klaxons, red lights pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Captain Reyes gripped the console, his knuckles white, eyes fixed on the view screen where the orbital station twisted in flames, a skeletal silhouette against the roiling inferno of the planet below. "Status on the transmitter?" he barked, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. "Online but barely," Jax replied from the engineering alcove, his wiry frame hunched over a tangle of sparking cables. The young engineer wiped grime from his face, revealing freckles dusted with soot. He'd always been the cautious one, double-checking every weld, but now his hands moved with frantic precision, splicing a power conduit that hissed like an angry serpent. "The core's overheating. We've got maybe 5 minutes before it fries everything." Lena straightened, her breath fogging the inside of her visor. As the comms officer, she drafted the message 100 times in her head during the long evacuation. Terse, unyielding, a final echo of humanity's grit. "No please, just facts." The Krell had ignored the warnings, dismissed the scouts' reports of their own empire's fragility. Now their worlds burned, just as the humans had predicted when the first probes returned with data on unstable fusion drives and overextended supply lines. But this wasn't vengeance, it was survival. Their ship, the Endurance, was the last human vessel outbound, carrying the seed of what remained. "Patch me through," Reyes said, sliding into the command chair. His broad shoulders, scarred from decades of frontier skirmishes, bore the weight of command without complaint. He'd led them through asteroid storms and diplomatic minefields, always with that quiet resolve that made the crew believe in the impossible. The view screen flickered as the transmitter linked, broadcasting on all frequencies. Emergency bands, diplomatic channels, even the old pirate relays that no one monitored anymore. "This is Captain Elias Reyes of the human vessel Endurance," he began, his voice cutting through the static like a laser. The words flowed deliberate, each one measured against the ticking clock. We warned you. 6 cycles ago, our envoys presented the simulations. Your expansion outpaced your safeguards. Faulty containment fields, cascading failures in your grid. You called it fearmongering. Called us primitives. Now look. Jax cursed under his breath as a shower of sparks erupted from the panel. He yanked a lever, rerouting auxiliary power from life support. The air recyclers whined in protest, growing thinner, but it bought them seconds. Lena monitored the signal strength, her fingers dancing over the interface. The transmission pierced the void, arcing toward the fleeing Krell flotilla, those massive bulbous ships that had once blockaded human outposts. Some were already venting plasma, their hulls glowing cherry red. Reyes leaned forward, the firelight from the view screen casting harsh shadows across his lined face. We're not here to gloat. We're leaving your space for good. But mark this, the burning isn't over. Your core worlds are next. Evacuate while you can. Humans built our arcs on ingenuity, not conquest. Learn from it or join the ashes. A tremor shook the deck, the Endurance shuddering as debris from the station clipped their shields. Lena's heart pounded. She'd seen the scans, Krell interceptors closing in, desperate or vengeful, their engines flaring against the backdrop of orbital fire. Jax slammed the panel shut, sealing the hack with a makeshift clamp forged from salvage. Transmitters locked. It's going out strong, repeating on loop. Reyes nodded once, then keyed the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, inertial dampeners straining as they broke orbit. The view screen filled with the planet's death throes, continents outlined in flame, oceans boiling under atmospheric rupture. Lena felt a pang, not triumph, but a hollow ache. They'd lost friends on that station, bartered secrets to buy time. The Krell's arrogance had doomed them, but humanity's warnings had gone unheeded because of pride, not ignorance. As the Endurance accelerated into the black, the transmission echoed one last time from their wake. We warned you. Jax slumped against the bulkhead, catching his breath, while Lena watched the fading glow. The cost lingered in the dimming lights, the strained air, reminders that escape was just the beginning of exile. Reyes turned from the console, his eyes meeting theirs. Helm's yours, Lena. Plot for the outer rim. We've got a long haul ahead. She took the controls, fingers steady now, guiding them toward the stars. The burning world shrank behind, a pyre of what might have been avoided. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the metal biting into her palms as the Odyssey shuddered under another barrage of plasma fire. The view screen flickered, showing the jagged silhouette of the Krell dreadnought closing in, its hull scarred from their earlier skirmish but unyielding. Evasive pattern Delta, she barked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Beside her, Engineer Tomas Reyes wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers flying over the auxiliary console. Shields at 20%, Cap. One more hit like that and we're venting atmosphere. Lena, the comms officer, leaned forward, her eyes sharp behind her visor. They're hailing us again. Same message loop, surrender your vessel or face annihilation. She glanced at Ilara, a wry twist to her lips. Persistent bastards. Ilara's jaw tightened. The Krell had ambushed them in the nebula's edge, drawn by the distress signal they'd picked up from the colony world below. Earth's last outpost, now a smoldering ruin after the alien fleet's orbital strike. The transmission that had lured them here, faint and looping, we warned you. It was all that remained, a ghost in the static, broadcast from the burning surface. Her crew had come to rescue survivors, but the Krell were here to erase any trace. Arm the forward cannons, Ilara said, rising to her feet. The ship groaned as it banked hard, stars streaking across the screen. Tomas cursed under his breath, rerouting power from life support to weapons. That'll buy us time but not much. Engines are overheating. Lena patched through a burst transmission to the away team on the planet. Javier, status? Static crackled, then her brother's voice cut in, ragged but alive. Survivors secured, 10 of us including the doc. But the fires are spreading. We need extraction now. Ilara nodded to herself, mind racing. The initial plan, swoop in, grab the team, slip away under nebula cover, had crumbled when the Krell warship dropped out of hyperspace. They'd fought off the first wave with a jury-rigged EMP burst, Tomas's ingenuity turning scrap into a shield piercer. But this dreadnought was different. Bigger, meaner, its weapons tuned to shred human hulls. Helm, plot a course through the debris field, Ilara ordered. Use the colony wreckage for cover. The pilot, a young ensign named Kira, complied without hesitation, her hands steady on the controls. The Odyssey dove, weaving between twisted metal hulks that had once been habitats and refineries. Alarms blared as shrapnel pinged off the hull. Tomas slammed a fist on his console. Incoming torpedoes, 3 locked on. Ilara's mind flashed to the stakes. Not just her crew but the last humans off-world carrying data cores with Earth's genetic archives. Lose them and humanity's spark died here. Countermeasures, she shouted. Lena triggered the decoys, flares blooming like false stars. 2 torpedoes veered off, detonating harmlessly, but the third grazed the port nacelle. The ship lurched, lights dimming. Damage report, Ilara demanded, bracing against the tilt. Nacelle breached, Tomas replied, already pulling up schematics. I can seal it but we'll limp at best. From the planet, Javier's voice broke through again. Ilara, we've got company down here, Krell ground troops. They're closing the perimeter. Tension coiled in her chest but she pushed it down. Hold position. We're coming. She turned to Tomas. Patch me into the main guns. Manual override. He hesitated, eyes wide. Cap, that's suicide. The targeting's fried. Then I'll make it work. Her tone brooked no argument. As Tomas handed her the controls, Ilara settled in, the familiar weight grounding her. The dreadnought loomed on screen, firing blindly into the debris. She waited, breath held, until a gap opened, a fleeting shadow amid the ruins. Now! Kira yelled and Ilara fired. The cannons roared, bolts lancing through the haze to strike the Krell ship's underbelly. Explosions rippled across its armor, buying precious seconds. The Odyssey burst from cover, thrusters flaring toward the pickup point. Below, flames licked the horizon, the colony's domes cracked and weeping smoke. Javier's team waved beacons from a ridge, silhouettes against the inferno. But as the shuttle bay doors ground open, sensors screamed, reinforcements. 2 more Krell fighters vectoring in fast. Ilara gripped the controls tighter. Tomas, give me everything you've got. He nodded, diverting the last of the power reserves. The ship accelerated, a wounded beast charging into the fray. Lena's voice cut through the din, they're locking weapons. Ilara's eyes narrowed. Not today. She triggered the final gambit, a overload pulse from the damaged nacelle turning vulnerability into a weapon. Energy surged, slamming into the lead fighter. It shattered, debris scattering like confetti. The second veered, but Kira anticipated, rolling the Odyssey into its path. Ilara's shot finished it, the explosion lighting the viewport in harsh white. Docking clamps engaged with a thud. The away team piled in, Javier clapping Tomas on the back. Nice work, brother. Ilara exhaled, slumping into her chair as the ship pulled away. The dreadnought was crippled, trailing plasma, but it wouldn't stay down long. Set course for the jump point. Maximum speed. As they broke, the dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control room, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the bulkheads. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the scarred metal. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, never from fear, but from the relentless heat seeping through the hull. The ship's AI, what was left of it, hummed faintly in the background, its voice reduced to sporadic bursts, hull integrity at 12%. Core meltdown imminent. Beside her, Dr. Liam Kerr hunched over a makeshift workstation, his fingers flying across a jury-rigged tablet. The physicist's usual wit had evaporated hours ago, replaced by a grim focus that hollowed his cheeks. The containment field's holding barely, he muttered, not looking up. But if we don't vent the excess plasma soon, it'll breach the inner compartments. We lose that and it's over for everyone still breathing. Elena nodded, her jaw set. Across from them, Engineer Mei Chen worked in silence, her tools clinking softly as she patched a leaking conduit. May's hands, steady as ever despite the tremors shaking the deck, spoke of her cautious nature, always one step ahead, anticipating the next failure. The trio had been the last holdouts, the ones who'd refused evacuation when the alien fleet's warnings turned to weapons. We told them, Elena said quietly, more to herself than the others. Humanity's not yours to harvest. The ship groaned, a deep metallic wail that vibrated through their bones. Outside the viewport, the void swirled with debris, shattered hulls from the armada that had come to claim Earth's resources, now reduced to glittering confetti against the stars. The aliens, those sleek, biomechanical horrors from the Orion Arm, had underestimated human desperation. Their transmissions had started as ultimatums. Surrender your world or burn. Elena's response, broadcast on every frequency, had been simple, we warned you. But warnings weren't weapons. The battle had raged for days, human ingenuity clashing against superior tech. fleets of improvised drones, jury-rigged nukes, and sheer stubborn refusal to yield. Now, aboard the battered US Vanguard, the cost was personal. Crewmates lost, systems failing, and the planet below, a blue marble scarred by orbital strikes, hanging by a thread. Liam slammed his fist on the console. The vent protocols are fried. I can reroute power from the auxiliary reactors, but it'll overload the stabilizers. We might spin out into the debris field. May glanced up, her dark eyes sharp. Do it. Better a wild ride than cooked alive. She wiped grease from her brow, her voice steady despite the fear Elena knew simmered beneath. May had always been the planner, the one who mapped escape routes in her head during briefings. Now, with no routes left, she adapted. Elena activated the comms, her voice cutting through the static. All hands, brace for maneuvering. This is for Earth. The words hung heavy, a reminder of the stakes. Not just survival but defiance. The aliens' final transmission looping in the logs mocked them. Primitives, your resistance is futile. But they'd made it futile in return, turning the invaders' own warp drives against them in a cascade of feedback explosions. As Liam initiated the reroute, alarms blared. The ship lurched, gravity fluctuating wildly. Elena braced against the console, watching the viewport as the Vanguard twisted away from the plasma surge. Debris pinged off the hull like hailstones. In the chaos, a new signal pierced the noise, not alien but human. Faint, garbled, Vanguard, this is ground control. Orbital defenses holding. Hold the line. Hope flickered, brief as a spark. May sealed the last patch, her hands trembling now. It's working. Pressure dropping. But the groan deepened, a fracture spider-webbing across the viewport. The burning wasn't done. Not yet. Elena met their eyes, the weight of command settling like lead. We adapt. We endure. For them. The stars outside blurred, the fight far from over, but in that moment the transmission's echo lingered. We warned you. Ilara's hands trembled as she keyed the final sequence into the console, the dim glow of the emergency lights casting long shadows across the bridge. The ship groaned around them, a dying beast battered by the relentless plasma storms that had torn through the fleet like judgment from the void. Jax leaned against the bulkhead, his face smeared with soot and blood from a gash above his eye, but his grin was fierce, unbroken. One last push, Captain. We've got this. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The alien armada, those sleek, obsidian behemoths that had dismissed humanity's warnings as primitive bluster, now littered the sensor feeds like shattered glass. Their hubris had brought them here, to the heart of the nebula where the humans had lured them, knowing the unstable core would amplify every miscalculation. But the cost. Ilara's gaze flicked to the empty stations where Lena and Marcus had fought until the end, their voices silenced in the chaos of the boarding skirmish. The stakes had been real from the start. Earth's outposts, the fragile colonies, all hanging by the thread of this gambit. The transmission array hummed to life, its signal piercing the interference like a knife. Ilara spoke into the mic, her words steady despite the ache in her chest. This is the last broadcast from the UNS Vanguard. To the remnants of the Kethari fleet, we warned you. The nebula's fury isn't a weapon we control, it's a force you ignored. Retreat or join the ashes. Static crackled, then cleared, carrying her message to the survivors scrambling in the distance. Jax clapped her shoulder, his touch grounding. They heard it. Sensors show 3 cruisers peeling off, engines hot toward the outer rim. But triumph tasted bitter. The Vanguard's hull was breached in a dozen places, life support flickering on reserves that wouldn't last the night. Ilara watched the scopes as the lead Kethari vessel exploded in a bloom of fire, caught in a feedback loop from their own disrupted shields, human code jury-rigged and uploaded during the feint, turning their tech against them. As the storm subsided, leaving a graveyard of wreckage, Ilara sealed the log. The camaraderie that had forged them through the endless drills and desperate repairs lingered in the quiet, a hard-won bond scarred by loss. Earth would hear their tale, a testament to grit over glory, but the stars felt colder now, the victory a pyre that illuminated the fragility of it all. Jax met her eyes, nodding toward the escape pods. Home's waiting, Cap. Let's make sure they remember the warning.